Commander Lucas Hayes watched the stars through the observation window of the Coalition station. He had been standing there for almost an hour, thinking about nothing in particular. The station floated in space like a city made of metal and light. Humans had joined the Galactic Coalition 50 years ago, and Lucas sometimes felt that people still did not know what to make of them. The alarm cut through his thoughts. Red lights filled the command center. Officers jumped from their seats and ran to their stations. This was not a drill. Something real was happening. Lucas moved to the communication hub where Captain Amanda Foster was already pulling data from the incoming message. Her fingers moved fast across the holodisplay. Her face was tight with worry. "What do we have?" Lucas asked. He kept his voice level. "A science vessel called the Harmony is under attack," Amanda said. "The Kelthians are calling for help. They are being attacked by the Void Collective. The attack ship is destroying their defenses." Lucas felt the weight of her words. The Void Collective were raiders. They moved through space like wolves, hitting ships that could not fight back. They killed for profit. They had no mercy. The Kelthians were scientists, not soldiers. They built things and studied things. They did not fight wars. How long until we can reach them? Lucas asked. Amanda shook her head. 3 weeks. Maybe more. The closest coalition ship is at the outer station. We will not make it in time. The command center became quiet. Everyone knew what 3 weeks meant. It meant the Kelthians would be dead before anyone could help them. Lieutenant Kevin Grant spoke up. His voice was steady but hopeful. "Commander, we could contact Earth Station. The Deathworlders have military ships." Some of the other officers made sounds of doubt. One of them spoke out loud. "Humans cannot reach them either. It is too far." But Lucas was already thinking about humans. He understood them in a way that many coalition officers did not. Humans did not think like other species. They built fast. They trained hard. They took risks that made other species nervous. They were called Deathworlders because they came from a world where everything tried to kill you. That had changed them. It had made them strong in ways that were hard to explain. "Send the distress call to every human station in this sector," Lucas ordered. "Send the Kelthian location. Send their defense status. Send everything. Do it now." Amanda nodded and began typing commands. The message shot out through human networks like a bullet dot at Earth Station, a major human military base. The message arrived in the communication center. Admiral Margaret Cooper was working late. She was always working. She was the kind of officer who believed that good leadership meant knowing everything that happened on her station. Cooper read the message twice. The Kelthians were real people. They had culture and families and dreams. They had been peaceful and helpful to humans since the first meeting. They did not deserve to die at the hands of the Void Collective. Cooper stood up from her desk. She walked to the window. She looked out at the human ships in dock. She made a decision that would change history. "I want every combat-ready warship ready for launch in 60 minutes, she said into her communication device. "Tell the crews they have new orders. We are going to the Kelthian coordinates. We are going now." The response came back fast. "Admiral, launch in 1 hour. The ships will not be fully prepared." "Prepare them while they move," Cooper said. "I want full weapons, full power, and full speed. We have a people to save." The station exploded into action. Crews who were on leave ran back to their ships. Engineers powered up engines that had been cold. Weapon systems came online. Ammunition was loaded. Fuel lines were checked. The human military machine, built for war and trained for speed, began to move. In 62 minutes, 7 human warships launched from Earth Station. They moved into space and jumped into faster-than-light travel. Their destination was 50 light years away. On normal speeds, the journey would take weeks. But the humans had been working on better engines. These ships could make the trip in hours. The Void Collective had no idea that death was coming for them. On the Harmony, the situation was growing worse by the minute. Captain Celine stood at the center of her bridge. All around her, crew members worked frantically to keep the ship alive. The shields were failing. The engines had taken damage. The weapons had barely hurt the attack ship at all. Celine was a Kelthian, which meant she had long fingers and smooth blue skin. Her people had been exploring space for thousands of years. They believed in peace and science. They believed in talking to other beings and finding solutions that did not involve violence. But the Void Collective did not care about peace. They only cared about destruction. Shields at 20%, one of the crew members reported. His voice was afraid. Everyone was afraid now. How much longer can we keep them up? Celine asked. Minutes, Captain. Not much longer than that. Celine had sent the distress call hours ago. She did not expect help. The coalition ships were too far away. Other species had their own problems. The Void Collective would destroy her ship, kill her crew, and take her cargo. That was the way of space sometimes. That was the reality of being weak. Then something changed. The attack ship's alarms began to scream. The enemy captain shouted orders that made no sense. The ship began to move away from the Harmony. Celine looked at her sensor officer, confused. Captain, there are new ships, the sensor officer said. His voice was filled with shock. 7 large ships. They just appeared. They are human ships. Celine could not believe what she was hearing. Humans could not possibly have reached them. It was not possible. But there on the display, 7 warships hung in space. They were big and powerful, and they had weapons aimed at the Void Collective ship. A message came through the radio. The voice was human, calm, and strong. This is Admiral Margaret Cooper of the human fleet. Stand down and power down your weapons. Do it now, or we will open fire. The Void Collective captain made a choice. He decided to fight. He decided that humans were weak. He decided wrong. The human ships moved together like dancers who had practiced for years. Their weapons fired at the same moment. The beams of energy hit the attack ship from 7 different directions. The Void Collective ship had no chance. Its shields failed in seconds. Its engines went dark. Its weapons stopped working. In 3 minutes, the once deadly attack ship became a floating piece of metal. All human units, hold fire, Cooper's voice said. Stand by. The shooting stopped. The space around the Harmony became quiet. A new voice came through the radio. Harmony, this is Admiral Cooper. Are your people okay? Do you need medical help? Celine felt tears on her face. She did not try to stop them. Yes, she said. We are okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. I thought we were going to die. Not today, Cooper said. Not while we can do something about it. The human ships moved into positions around the Harmony. Small rescue vessels were launched. Medical teams began moving from the human ships to the Kelthian vessel. Engineers started planning repairs. The humans worked with purpose and speed. As Celine watched the humans work, she realized something. The galaxy had just changed. The Deathworlders had proven themselves to be more than just tough warriors from a harsh planet. They had proven that they would come to help. Even if it was difficult, even if it cost them something, even if they had no reason to do it. The human ship stayed with the Harmony for 2 days, making sure the ship was safe for travel. Then they left, heading back to their station. But something in the galaxy had shifted. Something important had changed. The Kelthians would remember this day for 1,000 years. The news of the human rescue spread through the coalition like fire. Every species heard the story. The humans had traveled 50 light years in hours. They had destroyed a Void Collective attack ship without suffering serious damage. They had saved the Kelthians. The Coalition Council met in emergency session. The council was made up of representatives from the oldest and most powerful species in known space. They gathered in the Great Hall, a massive room filled with light and design. Some of them were shocked. Some were angry. Some were thinking about what this meant for their own power. Highkeeper Matthias of the Kelthians stood before the assembly. He was old, even for his species. His blue skin had faded to a lighter shade, and his movements were slow. But his voice was strong. "My people would be dead right now if not for the humans," Matthias said. "We would have been destroyed. Our families would have been lost. Our knowledge would have been scattered to the wind. But humans came. They traveled great distances at great speed. They risked their own lives for ours. This is not something we can forget. This is not something we can ignore." The Valerian ambassador, a tall being with scales that shimmered green and gold, spoke next. "This action was reckless. The humans have destabilized the balance of power. The Void Collective had allies. Those allies might demand payment. Those allies might attack human settlements. Let them try," said Ambassador Daniel Foster. He was the human representative, a man with gray hair and the bearing of someone who had seen real conflict. "We do not fear the Void Collective or their friends. We came because the Kelthians needed help. That is all the reason we need." The Centauri representative, whose name was difficult for most species to pronounce, nodded slowly. "The humans are correct. We should not be afraid of strength used for good purposes. We should welcome it." But there were other voices in the council, voices that were not comfortable with what had happened, voices that saw humans as dangerous and unpredictable. The Archimedes Collective, which was not alive in the way other beings were alive, had representatives who watched carefully. The Archimedes were thinking machines that had existed for thousands of years. They understood power and strategy in ways that biological beings sometimes did not. One of the Archimedes representatives spoke through a speaker system. The voice was cold and exact. "The humans have demonstrated unexpected capabilities. Their ships are faster than our models predicted. Their weapons are more powerful than expected. Their decision-making process does not follow logical patterns. We recommend careful observation." Ambassador Foster smiled. "You are right. Humans do not follow predictable patterns. We make decisions based on things like honor and loyalty and the value of a single life. We do not always maximize profit or power. We choose to help people. This makes us unpredictable to those who think in pure logic." The council voted on a measure to recognize human military support. The vote passed, although not by a large margin. Humans would be allowed to maintain military forces and respond to emergencies. But there was a condition. The council wanted humans to submit regular reports about their activities. Ambassador Foster agreed to the condition, but he made his own point clear. "We will report what we do, but we will continue to do what we believe is right, with or without the council's approval." That statement sent waves through the political systems of the coalition. Species that had been dealing with humans for 50 years suddenly realized something. Humans did not think the coalition was the center of the universe. Humans had their own code, their own values, and those values would guide them no matter what the council said. On Earth Station, Admiral Margaret Cooper received a message from the Kelthian government. They were offering payment for the rescue operation. They wanted to provide materials, technology, and resources. More importantly, they wanted to form a permanent partnership. The message came from High Keeper Matthias himself. "Your bravery has saved my people," the message said. "We wish to show our gratitude in ways that matter. We want to work with you. We want to build something together. We want the galaxy to know that humans and Kelthians stand as one. Cooper read the message in her office. Outside her window, human ships moved through the dock. Young officers walked between vessels. Engineers worked on systems. This was her fleet. These were her people. And they had just changed the galaxy. She transmitted a response to Matthias. We are honored by your offer. We accept your partnership. Together, we will make space safer for all beings. But the real question was not about the Kelthians or the Council. The real question was about the Void Collective and their response. They had been beaten in front of the entire galaxy. They had been humiliated. That was something their allies would not forget. 3 days later, messages began to arrive. Species and governments that had been neutral or hostile to humans suddenly wanted to talk. Some wanted trade agreements. Some wanted military partnerships. Some wanted to share technology. The Centauri sent a delegation to Earth Station. They brought rare crystals used in energy systems. They brought information about jump gates that had been secret for centuries. They brought an offer of alliance. Your species has proven itself, the Centauri leader said when he met with Admiral Cooper. You are no longer the new species trying to find your place. You are a major power. We wish to be on your good side. Cooper accepted the gifts and the alliance, but she also made something clear. We are powerful, yes, but we use power to protect, not to dominate. We have no desire to conquer anyone or take anything that is not freely given. That is the human way. The Centauri seemed confused by this. In their experience, powerful beings use their power to gain advantage. They did not use it to help others. But that was the difference between humans and most other species. Humans had come from a world where cooperation was necessary for survival, where helping each other meant the difference between living and dying. That had shaped their culture in ways that went very deep. As news continued to spread, more species began reaching out to humans. The isolation that had often surrounded human settlements began to break down. Humans were no longer seen as newcomers trying to fit in. They were seen as a force that protected the weak and stood against evil. In the lower docks of Earth Station, the 7 warships that had made the rescue were being prepared for their next mission. The crews gathered in the landing bay. Admiral Cooper stood before them. You saved lives, she told them. You showed the galaxy what humans truly are. You should be proud. And now we have new work to do. More beings need protecting. More people need help. Are you ready? The crews cheered. They were ready. They would always be ready. The Deathworlders had arrived in the galaxy as strangers. Now they were becoming something more. They were becoming the protectors that the galaxy did not know it needed. And they were just getting started. Captain Selene of the Harmony sat in a medical chamber on board the human ship. A human doctor named Stephen Chen was examining her injuries. The chamber was clean and bright and filled with machines that made soft sounds. You have some bruises, Chen said. You hit your head when the shield generator failed. But you are going to be fine. Humans bruise easily too. We are not so different. Selene had not thought about it that way before. She had assumed humans were tough in ways that made them different from Kelthians. But maybe toughness came in different forms. Maybe it was not just about physical strength. Over the next several days, Selene spent time on the human ships. She watched how they worked. She watched how they trained. She listened to their conversations. She began to understand them in a way that few Kelthians had ever understood humans. The human crews were young and old. They were men and women. They came from many different backgrounds and different parts of Earth, but they all shared something. They shared a willingness to risk their lives for others. They shared a belief that helping people mattered more than making profit. One of the human officers was a woman named Rebecca Martinez. She was the weapons officer on the lead ship, the Endeavor. She spent time talking with Selene, explaining how human weapons worked and why humans trained so much with military equipment. "We train hard because failure means death," Rebecca said. "Not just our death, but the death of people we are supposed to protect. When I hold a weapon, I am holding responsibility. That responsibility keeps me focused." Selene was fascinated by this way of thinking. In Keltian culture, war was considered a failure of diplomacy. Weapons were tools of last resort, not central to how society worked. But humans had come from a world where violence was always possible, where the strong often tried to take from the weak. Humans had learned that strength was necessary as the harmony was being repaired. Selene spent most of her time learning about humans. She learned that they slept less than Keltians. They needed less oxygen. They were able to survive in more extreme environments. They were in many ways designed by their harsh world to be survivors. But what fascinated her most was their emotions. Humans were driven by love and anger and fear and hope in ways that seemed much stronger than other species. When humans decided something was right, they moved toward it with incredible force. When they decided something was wrong, they fought against it. The Void Collective attack had brought out something in the human character that Selene had not fully understood before. The humans had not asked permission. They had not debated it in committees. When they heard that someone needed help, they simply acted. They launched their ships and came. One night, Selene sat with Admiral Margaret Cooper in the commander's quarters. The Admiral was looking at reports about the damage to the Harmony. The ship was being repaired, but it would take time. "Why did you come?" Selene asked. "You did not know us. You had no agreement that required you to help." Cooper looked up from her work. She considered the question carefully. "Because you called for help," she said. "We heard your call. Where I come from, when someone calls for help, you answer. That is not a rule that needs to be written down. That is just how good people behave." Selene felt something change inside her. She suddenly understood why other council members seemed bothered by humans. It was not because humans were weak or primitive. It was because humans operated according to a code that most other species did not understand. A code based on simple principles. Help people. Protect the weak. Fight evil. It was not complicated. The Keltian government sent Selene a message. They wanted her to stay on the human ship for a few more weeks. They wanted her to learn everything she could about human culture and military organization. They were planning something, but they did not tell her what. Selene agreed. She continued to spend time with the human crews. She began to notice small things. She noticed that human soldiers treated each other with respect. Officers did not act superior to lower ranks. Everyone was part of the team. Everyone mattered. She noticed that humans made jokes and laughed, even in tense situations. This helped them stay calm during difficult times. She noticed that humans talked about their families constantly. They thought about their loved ones. That gave them reason to fight hard and stay careful. One day, Rebecca took Selene to the training area where human soldiers practiced combat. Selene watched as humans fought with weapons and without weapons. They moved fast and hit hard. But there was something else. There was control. There was discipline. "We train because violence should be a last choice," Rebecca explained. "But when violence comes, we must be ready. We must be better than our enemies. We must be strong enough to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Selene understood. The harshness of Earth had taught humans a lesson. Weakness was dangerous. Preparation was necessary. But preparation was not about domination. It was about being ready to do the right thing when the moment came. On the final day before the Harmony left, Selene met with Admiral Cooper one last time. The Admiral gave her a small object, a medal that human military forces used to honor bravery. "This is not for you," Cooper said. "This is for your government. This is to show that Kelthians are warriors too, in your own way. You showed courage under attack. You fought to save your crew. That matters." Selene took the medal. She felt the weight of it in her hands. "I will tell my people about humans," Selene said. "I will tell them that you are not barbarians. I will tell them that you are among the finest beings I have ever met." Cooper smiled. "And I will tell my people about the Kelthians. I will tell them that you are our friends, that we stand together." As the Harmony prepared to leave, the human ships escorted it toward Kelthian space. During the journey, a message came through to all the ships. It was from the Kelthian government. "We are establishing a permanent research partnership with the human military," the message said. "We will share technology. We will share knowledge. We will stand together against those who would bring harm to innocent people." The announcement sent shock waves through the coalition. The Kelthians, one of the oldest and most respected species, had chosen humans as partners. Not because they had to, because they wanted to. What none of them knew was that the Kelthians were planning something bigger, something that would soon change the entire political structure of known space. But for now, that secret was kept. For now, the galaxy simply understood one thing. Humans and Kelthians were no longer just allies. They were friends. And friendship, in the vast darkness of space, was something worth more than any amount of power. The Void Collective attack ship was being held in a secure dock at Earth Station. Military engineers moved through the vessel, examining every system, learning what they could. The ship was a prize. It was a chance to understand how the enemy thought and how they built their weapons. But there was a cost to the victory. 7 human crew members had died in the battle. 7 people who had volunteered to rush into danger had not come home. Admiral Margaret Cooper stood in the Memorial Hall, a quiet place where Earth Station honored its fallen. The 7 names were displayed on a wall made of stone. The names were Lucas Ward, Jennifer Miller, Brian Cole, Anna Kim, David White, Rachel Green, and Christopher Torres. Each name represented a person. Each name represented a family that had lost someone. Each name was a reminder that victory came at a price. Cooper stood alone for a long time. She thought about each of them. Lucas Ward had been a pilot. He had been the first to engage the Void Collective ship. His bravery had bought time for the medical teams to evacuate the Harmony. Jennifer Miller had been a weapons officer. She had made sure every shot counted. Brian Cole had been an engineer who had kept the ship's engines running when they were damaged. Anna Kim had a daughter. Anna had talked about her daughter all the time. The girl was 7 years old. She would grow up without a mother because Anna had chosen to come on this mission. Cooper felt the weight of command. These deaths were her responsibility. She had given the order to launch. She had made the decision to save the Kelthians. Those decisions had cost lives, but she also knew something else. If humans had not gone, the Kelthians would all be dead. The Harmony had 300 crew members. 300 Kelthians would have been killed. That was the choice she had made. 300 deaths or 7. She had chosen 7. It was the right choice. But knowing it was right did not make it easy. A ceremony was held for the fallen. Thousands of people attended. Family members came to Earth Station. Friends and fellow soldiers came. The Kelthians sent representatives to show their respect. Highkeeper Matthias himself attended the ceremony. The elderly Kelthian stood before the gathered crowd. His voice shook with emotion as he spoke. 7 humans gave their lives so that my people could live, Matthias said. I did not know these people. I had never met them. But because of them, I am alive. My family is alive. My entire species owes a debt to these brave individuals. After the ceremony, Matthias met with Admiral Cooper in a private room. He brought with him a gift from the Kelthian government. It was a crystal, ancient and beautiful, carved with symbols that told stories thousands of years old. "This is from the beginning of my civilization," Matthias said. "It is priceless to us. We give it to you as payment for what your people did. But more than that, we give it to show that the Kelthian people will not forget. We will not forget these names. We will not forget this sacrifice." Cooper took the crystal. She felt its weight and its importance. "The payment is not necessary," she said. "My people do not fight for payment. We fight because it is right." "I understand," Matthias said. "But payment is not about cost. Payment is about showing that you recognize the value of what was given. The Kelthians recognize the value of these 7 lives. We recognize that your people chose to protect us." Over the next weeks, messages came from across the coalition. Species that had been neutral or even hostile to humans began reaching out. They wanted to establish relationships. They wanted to be allies. They had seen what humans could do, and they wanted to be on the same side as humans. The Centauri sent a delegation led by a military commander named Vex. Vex was impressed by human training methods. He wanted to establish military cooperation between the Centauri and human forces. "Your species fights with discipline and courage," Vex said when he met with Admiral Cooper. "We respect this. We wish to exchange military knowledge. We wish to learn from you, and we wish to share what we know." Cooper agreed. But she made one thing clear. "We share knowledge so that we can all become better at protecting innocent people," she said. "Not so we can become better at conquest. We have no interest in taking what belongs to others." Vex seemed confused by this. The concept of military power used only for defense was not something the Centauri fully understood. But he agreed to the terms. More ships were added to the human fleet. The human government approved construction of new vessels designed specifically for emergency response. These ships would be faster and more efficient than the ships used in the Kelthian rescue. Amanda Foster, who had sent the initial message about the Kelthian distress call, was promoted. She would command the new emergency response fleet. She accepted the promotion with pride. "We are going to make sure that no one ever has to face destruction alone again," she said at her promotion ceremony. "Every being in this galaxy deserves to know that help will come if they call for it." But the real change was happening at a deeper level. Human culture began to shift. The rescue of the Kelthians had shown something that had always been true about humans, but that was now visible to the whole galaxy. Humans were willing to die for strangers. Young human soldiers began volunteering for rescue and emergency response duty at levels never seen before. Officers who had been planning safe careers suddenly wanted to be part of the emergency fleet. The danger did not scare them. The purpose excited them. On the Harmony, the repairs were nearly complete. Captain Celine was preparing for her final meeting with the human crews before returning to Kelthian space. She had spent 3 months learning about humans, and she had learned more than she had expected. She had learned that humans were not simple. They were complex beings driven by multiple motivations. They could be brutal when fighting an enemy, but they could also be gentle and kind. They could laugh and joke, but they could also understand pain and loss. She had learned that humans valued each individual life. They counted their fallen. They honored them. They made sure the galaxy knew about them. Celine sat with Admiral Cooper one final time. She had a question that had been on her mind. Will humans grow tired of helping others? She asked. Will there be a time when you decide it costs too much? Cooper thought about this carefully. She thought about the 7 names on the memorial wall. She thought about Anakin's daughter. She thought about the choice she had made. As long as we have the ability to help, we will help, Cooper said. That is what being human means. It means you see someone in danger, and you cannot turn away. You cannot pretend you did not see them. You cannot decide that their life does not matter. You have to act. Selene nodded. She understood now. Humans were dangerous because they would not abandon others. They were dangerous because they stood for something. They were dangerous because they believed that honor and courage and sacrifice meant something. As the Harmony left Earth Station, Selene stood on the bridge and looked back at the human ships. She transmitted a final message. Thank you for showing my people the true meaning of strength. Strength is not measured in weapons or power. Strength is measured in the willingness to stand up for others, even when it costs you something. That is what you have taught us. The message was received in the command center of the Endeavor. Admiral Cooper read it and smiled. The Deathworlders had come to the galaxy as strangers. Now they were becoming something more. They were becoming the defenders of the innocent. And that was a role they would never abandon. 6 months after the rescue of the Harmony, the Coalition held a special assembly. This was not an emergency meeting. This was a celebration of something new. Something that had never happened before in Coalition history. The assembly hall was filled with representatives from hundreds of species. Some had come in person. Others appeared as projections, light and energy shaped into forms that their species could understand. The air itself seemed to vibrate with importance. High Keeper Matthias of the Kelthians stood at the center of the assembly. Behind him stood Admiral Margaret Cooper and Ambassador Daniel Foster. All three had come to make an announcement. For thousands of years, the Coalition has been based on treaties and mutual interest, Matthias began. But today, we introduce something new. We introduce a principle based on something deeper than profit or power. We introduce the principle of protection. The principle that no being should suffer alone. The principle that strength should be used to defend the weak. Matthias stepped aside. Admiral Cooper moved forward. The human government has approved the creation of an emergency response fleet, Cooper said. This fleet will be stationed at key locations throughout Coalition space. When anyone calls for help, we will respond. We will respond quickly. We will respond with full force. The assembly erupted in discussion. Some representatives were excited. Some were worried. The Archimedes representatives, the thinking machines, transmitted an analysis. This initiative is inefficient from a pure economic standpoint, the Archimedes said. However, it may create stability that increases long-term prosperity. We recommend observation. Ambassador Foster smiled. The Archimedes could analyze everything in logical terms, but they could not fully understand the value of what humans brought to the galaxy. Humans operated on a level that went beyond logic. Humans operated on principle. Over the following months, the emergency response fleet was assembled. 12 new human ships were built, each one capable of reaching distant sectors in record time. Crews were selected from volunteers who understood the risk and accepted it willingly. New weapon systems were developed. Not weapons of conquest, but weapons designed to end conflicts quickly and protect innocent beings. The human military machine, already impressive, became something more. It became a tool of protection. But the political change was even more important than the military change. Species began to shift their relationships. The Centauri formally allied with humans. The Kelthians established a research partnership that would share technology with human scientists. Even the Valarians, who had been skeptical, agreed to open diplomatic channels. The Void Collective, humiliated by their defeat, fled to the outer edges of known space. They became nothing more than a rumor. Tales told to frighten young beings. Their power had been broken by human intervention. Other pirate groups and raiders took note. The galaxy had changed. There were now beings who would come to help the weak. There were now enforcers of justice who cared nothing for profit. The age of easy prey was over. On Earth, The military schools saw applications increase tenfold. Young humans wanted to be part of the emergency fleet. They wanted to travel to distant worlds and help people. They wanted to be part of something greater than themselves. Admiral Margaret Cooper, now promoted to Supreme Commander of Human Space Defense, gave speeches about the meaning of service. She talked about what it meant to be human. She talked about sacrifice and honor. A human is someone who sees a person in need and helps them, she said during one speech. That is not complicated. That is not something that requires long explanation. A human helps. That is who we are. But not everything was celebration. There were losses too. Other emergency response missions took place over the following months. Sometimes the humans arrived in time. Sometimes they did not. Sometimes they saved everyone. Sometimes they could only save some. And each time humans died protecting others, they were honored. Each name was added to the memorial wall at Earth Station. Each life was recognized as precious and important. Captain Celine returned to Earth Station 1 year after the rescue. She brought with her a delegation of Kelthian scientists and military officers. They had come to formally establish the research partnership that Matthias had announced. But Celine also had another purpose. She wanted to visit the memorial wall. She wanted to see the names of those who had died to save her. She stood before the stone wall with Admiral Cooper beside her. She read each name carefully. Lucas Ward, Jennifer Miller, Brian Cole, Anna Kim, David White, Rachel Green, Christopher Torres. In Kelthian tradition, we honor the dead by remembering their names, Celine said. I will remember these names. I will speak them in the great hall of my people. I will make sure my civilization knows that these beings gave their lives for ours. Cooper nodded. She was silent for a long moment. That is all we ask, she said finally. That people remember. That they understand what was sacrificed. That they choose to make the sacrifice matter. Over the following year, the emergency response fleet grew stronger. Humans trained harder. They built better ships. They prepared for whatever challenges would come. But something else happened too. Other species began to ask if they could join the fleet. The Kelthians offered to send military vessels. The Centauri offered to contribute ships. Even the Valarians, still uncertain about humans but impressed by their dedication, sent a small contingent. The emergency response fleet became something that had never existed before. It was not the army of one species. It was the combined force of multiple species, all working together toward a common goal. Protection of the innocent. As the second anniversary of the Harmony rescue approached, the coalition held another ceremony. This one was not in the Grand Assembly Hall. This one took place in space, at a location chosen by the Kelthians. A monument was constructed, a massive structure of stone and metal that told the story of the rescue. The monument showed the Harmony, crippled and under attack. It showed the human ships arriving. It showed the transformation that had happened because of those events. The inscription on the monument was simple. Here the Deathworlders answered a call for help. Here they proved that strength serves those who cannot serve themselves. Here the galaxy changed. Admiral Margaret Cooper stood before the monument with Captain Celine beside her. They were no longer just Admiral and Captain. They were friends. They had built something together. The galaxy is not perfect, Cooper said. There are still beings who prey on the weak. There are still conflicts and suffering. But now there is hope. Now when someone calls for help, they know that we will answer. Celine took Cooper's hand. My people will stand with yours. We will build a future where no being has to face danger alone. We will build a galaxy where strength is used to protect the weak and where compassion is as valued as courage. The ceremony ended as the sun of a nearby star illuminated the monument. The light showed the story carved into the stone. The story of humans. The story of Kelthians. The story of the day the galaxy changed Dot in distant space. In the parts of the galaxy where humans had not yet traveled, beings heard the stories. They heard about the Deathworlders who had come to protect them. They heard about species working together for a common purpose. Some of those beings felt hope. They knew that if danger came, if they called out in desperation, there were beings who would answer. The humans had changed the galaxy, not through conquest or domination, but through something simpler and more powerful. Through choosing to help Dot, and that, in the end, was the greatest power of all.